My own son stood in a courtroom and calmly told a judge that I couldn't remember where I lived anymore. He said it with that soft, practiced concern people use when they want to sound kind while taking something from you. I sat there, hands folded neatly over my purse, listening to him erase me piece by piece, and all the while, my fingers rested on a small recorder hidden inside that purse. 6 months of conversations, every word they thought I'd forget, every lie they built so carefully I didn't say a single thing. Not yet. Hello, my dears. You hear that? Your own child speaking about you like you're already gone. I don't like that tone one bit. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if someone tried to rewrite your mind like that? And don't forget to like and subscribe. These stories matter. 6 months earlier, my mornings still belonged to me. I live on Briar Lantern Road, in a narrow brick house that holds more memories than furniture. At 73, you learn to move slower, but you also learn the exact rhythm of your own life. I wake up before the sun fully settles, shuffle into the kitchen, and make myself a cup of chicory coffee the way my husband Arthur liked it. Strong enough to wake the dead, he used to say, though he's been gone 9 years now. The kettle whistles. The floorboards creak in the same places. The old clock above the pantry ticks with a stubborn, dignified patience. Nothing in that house has ever surprised me. Until it did. It started small. That's how these things always begin. "Mom, you forgot about dinner last night," Adrian said one Wednesday morning, standing in my doorway like he owned the frame. I looked up from my crossword. "What dinner?" He paused just long enough to make me question myself. "We talked about it on Sunday. Celine booked a table at the Gilded Apron." I remember Sunday very clearly. I had baked an almond torte with a thin layer of apricot glaze, the kind that sticks slightly to your teeth, and Juniper had come by with a book she thought I'd enjoy. We talked about her studies. We did not talk about any dinner. "I don't recall that," I said. Adrian sighed, the kind of sigh that carries disappointment more than anger. "That's what I'm worried about, Mom." Worried, such a gentle word, such a dangerous one when used incorrectly. He walked into the kitchen without asking, opened cabinets, glanced at the stove as if it might confess something to him. I watched him move, trying to understand why everything about his presence felt measured, observant, like he wasn't visiting. He was assessing. "I'm fine, Adrian," I said, more firmly this time. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course you are." That was the first time I felt it. Not fear, not yet. Just a thin, quiet discomfort, like a draft under a closed door. Celine came by later that afternoon. My daughter has always carried herself like she's speaking on a stage no one else can see. Even her concern has a kind of performance to it. She hugged me too tightly. "How are you feeling today?" "I feel like myself," I answered. She pulled back, studying my face longer than necessary. "You seem a little off." "I'm not off," I said. "Oh, sweetheart," she replied softly, glancing toward the window where Mrs. Opal Merrick was tending to her roses. "You don't have to pretend with me." I followed her gaze. Opal looked up briefly, gave a polite wave, then returned to her pruning shears. But something in Celine's tone, that careful softness, made the moment feel staged, as if I were already being introduced to the world as something fragile. We sat down for tea. I served it in the porcelain set Arthur and I bought in a small shop in Prague. Blue filigree, slightly chipped on one handle. Celine watched me pour like I might spill it. "Did you take your medication?" she asked. Yes. Are you sure? I set the teapot down. Celine. She flinched slightly, then smiled again. I'm just making sure. There it was again. That word, making sure. By the time she left, my house no longer felt entirely like mine. Not because anything had changed physically. The same curtains, the same worn armchair, the same faint scent of cinnamon and old paper. But because something invisible had shifted, like someone had quietly moved the walls a few inches inward. That night, I checked my pill organizer twice, then 3 times. Everything was exactly where it should be, and yet, when I turned off the light and sat in the quiet, I heard Adrian's voice again. That's what I'm worried about, Mom. I didn't sleep well. The next morning, I found my brass letter opener in the wrong drawer. The next morning, I found my brass letter opener in the wrong drawer. Now, that might not sound like much to you. But when you've lived in the same house for 41 years, you know where everything belongs the way you know your own handwriting. That letter opener, narrow, gold-toned, with a handle shaped like a small heron, had always rested in the top right drawer of my writing desk. Always. I had placed it there the night Arthur brought it home, wrapped in newspaper, saying it was too elegant for bills, but perfect for opening good news. It was in the kitchen, specifically in the second drawer beside the stove, wedged between a wooden spoon and a tin of cloves. I stood there for a moment, holding it, trying to recall if I had carried it there myself. I searched for the memory the way you search for a word that's just out of reach. Nothing came. Not even a fragment. I placed it back where it belonged. Top right drawer. Closed it carefully. Then I made my chicory coffee and told myself I was overthinking. By noon, Adrian called. Mom, how's your morning? Quiet, I said. Just the way I like it. Did you find everything okay today? The question slipped in too smoothly, too casually. I beg your pardon? I mean, you didn't misplace anything? He corrected quickly. I leaned back in my chair. No, Adrian. Everything is exactly where it should be. A pause. Not long. Just long enough. Good, he said. That's good. After we hung up, I sat there staring at the phone. That thin discomfort returned, stronger this time. It wasn't just what he asked. It was how he asked it, like he already knew the answer he expected. That afternoon, Celine came again. No call beforehand. Just the soft click of the door opening with the spare key I had given her years ago. Back when, just in case, meant something entirely different. I brought lunch, she announced, placing a paper bag on the counter. You shouldn't be cooking too much on your own. I've been cooking longer than you've been alive, I replied. She smiled, but there was a tightness in it. Things change. Inside the bag was quinoa salad with roasted fennel and something that smelled faintly of saffron. Expensive. Carefully chosen. Not something she'd usually bring unless she was trying to prove a point. We sat at the table. She watched me take each bite. Do you remember what you did this morning? She asked suddenly. Yes. What did you have for breakfast? Toast. Honey. Coffee. And yesterday? I set my fork down. Celine, what is this? She raised her hands slightly. Just checking. You know, memory exercises. It's good to keep the mind sharp. My mind is sharp. Of course, she said again, that same soft tone, as if agreeing with a child. I didn't finish the salad. After she left, I walked through the house slowly, room by room. The living room, the study, the bedroom. Everything looked normal at first glance, but when I looked closer, things felt touched. A cushion slightly out of place, a book turned the wrong way on the shelf. The faintest shift, like someone had passed through and tried not to leave a trace. Then I noticed the jar, my lingonberry preserves. I keep them on the second pantry shelf, right beside the jar of star anise. It's a habit. Order brings peace. The jar was gone. I checked every shelf, every cabinet. Nothing. For a moment, just a moment, I felt something cold settle behind my ribs. Had I moved it? I closed my eyes, trying to remember. Breakfast? Toast? Honey. I hadn't touched the preserves in days. I opened my eyes again and forced myself to breathe steadily. No, I said out loud, just to hear something certain. No. An hour later, I found the jar. In the bathroom. On the edge of the sink, beside my hand soap. I didn't pick it up immediately. I just stood there, looking at it, trying to understand what I was seeing. The label faced outward, perfectly visible, as if it had been placed there deliberately. My reflection in the mirror looked older, not weaker, not confused, just alert in a way I hadn't been before. That evening, Adrian and Nadine came together. Nadine rarely visited unless something was being discussed. She's the kind of woman who chooses her words like she's placing chess pieces. Always 3 moves ahead, always polite enough to never seem offensive. "Miriam, you look tired," she said gently, setting her handbag on the chair, like she intended to stay a while. "I'm not tired," I replied. Adrian didn't sit right away. He walked through the house again. Kitchen, living room, hallway. The same quiet inspection. Then he turned to Nadine. "I told you." Told her what? They sat down across from me like I was the one being evaluated. "Mom," Adrian began, folding his hands. "We've been talking." "That's never a good start," I said. Nadine gave a soft, almost apologetic smile. "We're just concerned, that's all." "There's been a pattern," Adrian added. "Little things, forgetting plans, misplacing items." My fingers tightened slightly around my teacup, but I kept my voice even. "Everyone misplaces things." "Yes," Nadine said gently, "but not like this." There it was again. Not like this. Adrian leaned forward slightly. "We think it might be time to consider some support, just as a precaution." "What kind of support?" I asked. "Nothing drastic," he said quickly. "Just someone checking in, maybe helping with finances, appointments, making sure everything stays organized." Organized. I looked at my house. At the shelves I had arranged, the drawers I knew by memory, the life I had built piece by piece. "I am organized," I said quietly. They exchanged a glance, a quick one. But I saw it. And in that glance, something finally shifted inside me. Because that wasn't concern. That was agreement. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself if I had moved things. Instead, I asked a different question. Who did? I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid. Fear comes with confusion, and by then, something inside me had already begun to sharpen. It was a quiet kind of clarity, the kind that settles in when you stop arguing with what you see. In the morning, I dressed carefully. Navy blouse, pressed slacks, the small silver brooch shaped like a thistle. Arthur always said it made me look formidable in a polite way. I had an appointment with Dr. Simon Greaves, my regular physician. Adrian had insisted on scheduling it. He arrived 10 minutes early, of course. "Ready?" he asked, already holding my coat. "I can manage my own coat," I replied, but I let him hand it to me anyway. The drive was quiet. He kept glancing at me at stoplights like I might suddenly forget where we were going. I watched the road instead. The same bakery on the corner, the same florist with its striped awning, the same narrow turn near the old cinema. Nothing had changed, except the way he looked at me. Inside the clinic, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and something citrusy. Dr. Greaves greeted me with his usual calm smile, though I noticed his eyes flick briefly to Adrian before settling on me. "Miriam, good to see you," he said. "How have you been feeling?" "I've been well," I answered. Adrian stepped in before I could say more. "She's had a few episodes, forgetting plans, misplacing things. Yesterday, she found food in the bathroom." I turned my head slowly. "I did not put it there." "I didn't say you did it on purpose, Mom," he replied gently. That word again, gently, as if softness made it true. Dr. Greaves cleared his throat. "Let's take this one step at a time. Miriam, I'd like to run a few routine checks, just to be thorough." "Of course," I said. The tests were simple. Dates, words, shapes, numbers. I answered each one without hesitation. I even added a small remark about the sequence pattern in one of his questions. Something he hadn't asked for, but noticed. He nodded slowly. "Very good." Adrian didn't look relieved. When the tests were over, Dr. Greaves leaned back slightly. "From what I can see, Miriam is functioning well. There are no clear signs of cognitive decline based on today's evaluation." Silence. Adrian shifted in his chair. "But what about early stages? These things don't always show up right away." "That's true," the doctor said carefully. "But we also need consistent, verifiable patterns, not isolated incidents." Isolated. I held on to that word. On the way out, Adrian spoke less, but I noticed his jaw was tighter, his steps quicker. Something about the result hadn't gone the way he expected. That afternoon, while he was in the kitchen making himself tea, in my kitchen, I walked past the coat he had left draped over the chair. I don't usually go through people's belongings, but I'm not usual anymore, am I? I slipped my hand into the inner pocket. A brochure, glossy, thick paper, folded twice. Silverwood Residential Care. I opened it slowly, smiling faces. Bright rooms, phrases like dignity in every stage, and specialized memory support. There was even a small section outlining legal assistance for transitioning decision-making authority. I closed it carefully and placed it back exactly where it had been. When I returned to the living room, Adrian looked up. "Everything okay?" I sat down across from him, folded my hands. "Yes," I said, and for the first time, I let a small hesitation enter my voice. "I just feel a little tired today." He watched me closely. Then slowly, he smiled. 3 days later, Celine invited me to dinner. Not a casual visit. Not one of her controlled drop-ins with quinoa and quiet questions. This was something arranged. A reservation, a time, a place. The Copper Pheasant. One of those restaurants where the lighting is soft enough to flatter people and the prices are high enough to justify bad behavior. 7 o'clock, she said over the phone. We all thought it would be nice to spend some time together. All of us. That included Adrian, Nadine, Victor, even Juniper. I agreed, not because I trusted the invitation, but because I wanted to see what they would do when they were all in the same room. I chose my clothes carefully. Dark blue dress, simple cut. Pearl earrings, the same ones I wore to Arthur's retirement dinner. I brushed my hair slower than usual, watching my reflection as if I were meeting myself for the first time. "You're not confused," I said quietly to the mirror. The mirror did not argue. The restaurant was already full when I arrived. Soft music, low voices, the faint scent of roasted meat, and something citrus. Bergamot, perhaps. I recognized the kind of place immediately. Designed for appearances. They were seated at a round table near the center. Adrian stood when he saw me. Too quickly. "Mom, you made it." "I said I would," I replied. Celine leaned in to kiss my cheek. "You look lovely." "I always do," I said. And for a brief moment, something in her expression flickered. We sat. At first, everything felt normal. Too normal. Drinks were ordered. A bottle of Barolo appeared. Victor made a joke about the menu being written for people who pretend to understand it. Nadine smiled politely. Juniper gave me a small, quiet look, something between concern and apology. Then it started. Subtle at first. "So, Mom," Adrian said, swirling his wine, "did you find your car keys today?" "Yes." "Where were they?" "Where I left them." He nodded slowly, as if marking something down in his mind. Celine leaned in slightly. "You called me yesterday afternoon." "I did." "You asked me the same question 3 times." I looked at her. "No, I didn't." She smiled gently. "It's okay if you don't remember." Victor chuckled softly, shaking his head like this was all very understandable. I picked up my fork. Took a bite of the starter. Something delicate with fennel and a trace of anise. I tasted nothing. "I remember the conversation clearly," I said. Celine reached across the table, placing her hand lightly over mine. "Miriam. Not Mom. Not Mother. Miriam. It's not a bad thing," she continued softly. "We just want to help. Help." The word hung there, heavy and misplaced. The main course arrived. Something elaborate. Braised lamb with a reduction that smelled faintly of pomegranate. The waiter placed it in front of me with a careful smile. As I reached for my knife, it slipped slightly from my fingers and tapped against the plate. A small sound, but it was enough. Victor's phone shifted on the table, not obviously. Just enough for the camera to angle toward me. Adrian leaned forward immediately. "Careful." "I am careful," I replied. Nadine spoke for the first time since we sat down. "It's all right, Miriam. No one is judging you." I looked at her. No one is judging you. And yet, every eye at that table was on me, watching, waiting, measuring. Juniper shifted in her seat. "Grandma's always steady," she said quietly. Adrian didn't respond, but his jaw tightened. Conversation moved on, but not really. Every story I told was corrected. Every detail I gave was softened, adjusted, reframed. "That's not how it happened, Mom?" "I think you're mixing things up." "Close, but not quite." Piece by piece, word by word, they weren't arguing with me. They were replacing me. At some point, I stopped trying to correct them. I simply listened and watched. Because once you stop defending yourself, you start noticing things. The way Victor kept adjusting his phone. The way Nadine avoided direct eye contact when certain topics came up. The way Celine's concern became sharper when she thought no one was looking. And Adrian. Adrian was leading it. Every question, every redirection, every gentle correction. This wasn't a conversation. It was a performance. And I was the subject. When the dessert came, something light, citrus foam with crushed pistachio, Juniper leaned slightly closer to me. "Grandma," she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. "Dad's been talking to someone. A lawyer, I think." I didn't turn my head. I didn't react. I simply took a slow sip of water. And in that moment, Everything became very clear. This wasn't about concern. It wasn't about memory. It wasn't even about me. It was about control. And they thought I was already too far gone to see it. The next morning, I ordered the recorder. Not from any place Adrian would think to check, and not under my name. I used an old catalog account I hadn't touched in years, the kind that still sends paper receipts with slightly faded ink and too many numbers at the bottom. The device itself was small, unremarkable, the size of a matchbox. Easy to hide. Easy to forget. That part mattered. If you want people to reveal themselves, you don't confront them. You let them relax. I began that same day. When Adrian called, I let my voice soften just enough. Not weak, not theatrical, just uncertain. "Mom, did you remember to pay the utility bill?" A pause. A small breath. I think so," I said. "Or maybe I was going to." Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "It's okay. These things happen." I could almost hear the shift, the subtle recalculation. That was the moment he started believing it. By afternoon, Selene arrived again. No warning, as usual. This time she didn't bring food. She brought a folder. "I thought we could go over some things together," she said, placing it neatly on the table. I didn't open it right away. "What things?" "Just practical matters. Bills, insurance, maybe a few permissions. Nothing complicated." I let my fingers hover over the folder, then pulled them back slightly. "I've been feeling a bit off lately," I said quietly. Celine's eyes softened instantly. Not with warmth, with confirmation. "I know," she said. Of course she did. Inside the folder were forms. Clean, official-looking, with carefully placed lines for signatures. Words like authorization, temporary access, medical proxy, all presented as small steps. Harmless steps. "Just in case," Selene added gently. "So we can help you if you need it." "Help." I nodded slowly. Maybe that's a good idea." She smiled, and in that smile, I saw something settle into place. That evening, after she left, I placed the recorder inside a hollowed-out book on my shelf. An old encyclopedia volume no one had touched in decades. The cover still read EF, fitting, in a way. I tested it twice. The sound was clear. The next day, I began keeping a log. Nothing dramatic. Just a small notebook, tucked beneath the linen drawer. Times, dates, who visited, what was said, what was moved, what didn't make sense. At 10:15, Adrian called, asked about keys again. At 12:40, Selene entered without knocking, rearranged mail. At 14:05, kitchen drawer left open, I did not open it. Patterns. That's what they were building. So I built one too. 2 days later, Adrian came by unannounced. Again. He moved differently now. Less cautious. More certain. "Mom," he said, walking straight into the kitchen, "we should really think about simplifying things around here." "Simplifying?" I asked. "Fewer bills, fewer responsibilities, less to keep track of." He opened the cabinet above the sink, looked inside like he expected to find evidence. I stood in the doorway, watching him. "I don't mind keeping track of things," I said. He turned, smiling faintly. "That's just it. You don't have to anymore." "Not you can't. You don't have to." He was getting better at it. That same afternoon, I called the bank. Not the main line. The direct number Arthur had written down years ago in his precise, careful handwriting. The one labeled only if necessary. A woman named Elise answered. Her voice was calm. Professional. "I'd like to review recent access attempts on my accounts," I said. There was a pause as she pulled up the records. "Yes, Mrs. Halstead, I see a request to add a secondary manager. It hasn't been approved yet. Who made the request? Adrian Halstead. Of course. I didn't authorize that, I said. No, ma'am, it's still pending. Leave it that way? Yes, ma'am. I hung up and sat there for a long moment, staring at the wall. Then I wrote one more line in my notebook. They're not waiting for me to fail. They're preparing for it. That evening, I made myself dinner. Simple. Toasted rye, a bit of cheese, and a small dish of pickled herring the way Arthur used to like it. Sharp, clean, honest. I ate slowly, and for the first time since all of this began, I didn't question my memory. I trusted it. Because the confusion was never mine. It was something they were trying to give me, and I had just decided I wasn't going to accept it. They stopped pretending to wait. Up until then, everything had been careful. Suggestions, soft voices, concerned glances. But once I began playing my part, once I let hesitation slip into my words and doubt into my tone, something in them relaxed. And when people relax, they stop hiding. Adrian arrived that Friday with a folder thicker than the last one. Just a few more things, Mom, he said, placing it on the table without asking. I didn't reach for it immediately. I was slicing a pear. Slow, deliberate movements. The knife made a clean sound against the ceramic plate. What kind of things? I asked. Precautions, he replied. Temporary authorizations? Medical access, mostly. Nadine stepped in behind him, already removing her gloves. It's really for your protection, Miriam. If anything were to happen, we wouldn't want delays. Delays, such a polite word for control. I set the knife down and wiped my hands on a cloth. Let them see the slight pause, the flicker of uncertainty. I don't know if I understand all of it, I said. Adrian softened instantly. That's okay. You don't need to understand everything. That's why we're here. There it was again. That quiet removal of ownership. I opened the folder. Legal language, clean margins. Signature lines waiting patiently at the bottom of each page. One document in particular caught my eye. Durable medical authorization. Another. Temporary financial oversight. Temporary. I almost smiled. Maybe. I should think about it, I said slowly. A flash of irritation crossed Adrian's face. Gone in a second, but I saw it. Of course, Nadine said quickly. No pressure at all. No pressure. They were applying it from every direction. Later that afternoon, after they left, I retrieved the recorder from the hollowed book and listened. Their voices filled the room again, clearer than memory. Adrian. She's hesitating. That's new. Nadine. It's normal. Don't push too hard yet. Adrian. We don't have time for slow. Nadine. Then make it look like her idea. I stopped the recording, sat there in silence. Then I rewound it, played it again. Every word, every tone, every intention laid out neatly, like the papers they wanted me to sign. That evening, Selene called. I spoke to Dr. Greaves, she said, skipping any greeting. He thinks we should monitor things more closely. I leaned back in my chair. Did he say that? Well, not in those exact words, she admitted. But he agreed it's better to be proactive. Of course, I said softly. Wouldn't want things to get worse. A pause, then quieter. You understand we're doing this for you, right? Yes, I replied. And this time, I let my voice sound tired. I don't always trust myself anymore. Silence. Then a breath. Relief. I know, she said. That one sentence told me everything I needed. The next day, I added something new to my routine. Photographs. Nothing obvious, just small things. The kitchen before I left the room, the position of objects on the table, the drawer handles, the arrangement of mail. By afternoon, something had changed again. A cupboard left slightly open. A chair moved half an inch. The fruit bowl rotated just enough to be noticeable. If you were looking. I took another photo, then another. They were building a story, but stories need consistency. And I was making sure theirs didn't have it. 2 days later, I caught the first real mistake. Adrian and Celine thought I was asleep. They were in the kitchen. Voices low, but not low enough. The recorder was already running. "She almost signed," Celine whispered. "Almost doesn't help," Adrian replied. "We need a clear pattern before filing." "And the house?" she asked. "We list it as soon as we get authority." "Nadine already spoke to someone." A pause. "And the accounts?" Celine pressed. Adrian's voice dropped, even lower. "We split it after expenses. 50-50. Clean." I didn't move, didn't breathe any louder than I had to. Because that was it. Not concern, not care. A plan. Clear. Measured. Agreed upon. When they left, I stayed in my chair for a long time. Not shocked. Not even angry. Just certain. I opened my notebook, and for the first time, I didn't write a question. I wrote a statement. They are preparing to take everything. Then, beneath it, in smaller, steadier handwriting, let them think I'm ready to give it to them. The mistake wasn't in what they said, it was in how confident they sounded saying it. That's what stayed with me the next morning as I stood in my kitchen, sunlight cutting through the blinds in narrow lines across the table. Adrian's voice kept replaying in my head. We split it after expenses. Calm. Practical. Like he was discussing furniture, not his own mother. I didn't rush. People expect reaction, anger, tears, confrontation. But reaction gives them time to adjust. Silence doesn't. At 9:10, I called Opal Merrick. She answered on the second ring. "Miriam, everything all right?" "I need you to tell me something honestly," I said. "Have you ever seen me outside at night? Wandering?" A pause. "No," she said firmly. "You close your curtains every evening. Why?" "Just checking." Another pause. Softer this time. "What are they saying about you?" "That I'm forgetting things," I replied. "That I'm not reliable." Opal let out a quiet breath. "Miriam Halstead, I've known you for years. You're sharper than half this street. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I thanked her and hung up. Then I made another call. Different clinic, different part of town, no shared records, no family involvement. "I'd like a full cognitive evaluation," I said. "Earliest slot is Thursday." "I'll take it." By noon, Celine arrived. Of course she did. "You didn't answer your phone," she said, stepping inside like she owned the door. "I was resting." She walked straight into the kitchen, stopped, looked around. I followed her gaze. The flour jar was open. White powder scattered across the counter, a thin trail falling toward the floor. I hadn't touched it. Celine tilted her head slightly. "Were you baking?" "No." She stepped closer, brushing her fingers along the surface. "Then how did this happen?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her. And for a second, just one, her expression changed. Not concern, calculation. Then it was gone. "It's okay," she said softly. "These things happen." I walked past her. Opened the drawer where I keep my cloths. It stuck halfway. I pulled harder. Inside, beneath the folded fabric, was my mail. Not where I left it. Hidden. I picked up the top envelope. Unopened. Celine watched me carefully. I thought I already sorted those, she said lightly. I hadn't, I replied. Silence. Then she smiled. Well, at least we found them. I noted the time. 12:17. After she left, I didn't clean immediately. I took photos first. The counter, the floor, the drawer, the envelopes. Then I wiped everything clean. That afternoon, I met Calder Wynn. His office was quiet, precise. The kind of place where nothing gets ignored. He didn't interrupt me, didn't react, just listened. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. You're not confused, he said. No. And you've been documenting everything. Yes, he nodded once. Good, because what they're doing isn't concern. What is it? A case, he said. They're building one. I placed the recorder on his desk. And I'm building mine. He looked at it, then at me. A small, sharp smile. Then we're not defending you, he said. We're exposing them. All right. This is the moment everything changes. They're not worried. They're staging evidence, moving things, hiding things, then pointing at it. If you were Miriam, would you confront them right now or keep collecting proof? I'll tell you honestly, I'd stay quiet a little longer and let them dig their own grave. Once you understand the rules of the game, you stop reacting to the moves. You start guiding them. Calder told me that during our second meeting, 2 days after I brought him the recorder. They think they're ahead, he said, flipping through my notes. Which means they'll get careless. They already are, I replied. Yes, he nodded. But not enough yet. We need something undeniable. Not suspicion, not patterns. Proof of intent. Intent. That word stayed with me. Because forgetting things can be explained. Confusion can be argued. But intent exposes everything. Thursday morning, I drove myself to the clinic. Different town. No familiar faces. No Adrian sitting beside me, answering questions I hadn't been asked. The neurologist, Dr. Elaine Mercer, was precise, direct, and refreshingly uninterested in family narratives. Why are you here? She asked. For clarity, I answered. The tests were longer this time, more detailed. Memory sequences, problem solving, spatial reasoning. She watched closely, not just what I answered, but how. At the end, she closed the file and looked at me. There is no indication of cognitive impairment, she said. I didn't smile. I'll need that in writing. You'll have it. When I stepped outside, the air felt different, not lighter, sharper, because now I didn't just know the truth. I could prove it. That afternoon, I stopped by the bank. Not the main branch Adrian uses, the older one. The one with marble floors and a manager who still remembers Arthur by name. I'd like to review access permissions, I said. Within minutes, I had confirmation. Adrian had tried twice more to gain financial authorization. Denied both times. Would you like to block future attempts? The manager asked. Not yet, I said. He looked slightly surprised. I'd prefer to see how far he's willing to go. That evening, Selene called. We're thinking of scheduling another appointment, she said. A specialist this time. I already saw one, I replied. Silence. What do you mean? I had an evaluation this morning. Her voice sharpened just slightly. Why didn't you tell us? I didn't think I needed permission. Another pause. Then she softened again. What did they say? I let just enough hesitation slip in. They said I seem fine. Seem. I chose that word carefully. Selena exhaled slowly. Sometimes early stages don't show clearly. Maybe, I said. I could hear her thinking, recalculating. Good. The next day, Adrian came over again. No announcement, no call. He walked in, slower this time, watching more carefully. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk about next steps." I nodded, sitting at the table. "I've been thinking too," I said. That caught him off guard. "Oh?" "Yes," I continued. "Maybe it would be easier if you handled some things for me." There it was. The opening. His eyes changed immediately. Not softer, sharper. "I think that's a very good idea," he said. "I get tired keeping track of everything," I added quietly. "That's completely understandable." He sat down across from me, leaning in. "We can simplify everything. Bills, accounts, decisions. You won't have to worry anymore." I nodded slowly. "Maybe I should sign those papers." For a fraction of a second, he froze. Then, relief. Real relief. "I can bring them tomorrow," he said quickly. "All right." He stood up almost immediately, like he couldn't afford to stay still. "I'll take care of everything." Of course you will, I thought. That night, I placed the recorder under the table. Not hidden too deeply, just enough. Because tomorrow, they would stop pretending entirely. And that's when people say the most honest things of all. Adrian didn't come alone. He brought Celine and Nadine. Of course he did. You don't close a deal like this without witnesses. I had already prepared the room. Not in any obvious way. Nothing dramatic. Just small things. The table cleared, chairs placed evenly. The recorder resting beneath the edge, angled just enough. I made tea. Not for comfort, for normalcy. When they walked in, I didn't stand up immediately. Let them settle first. Let them feel in control. "Mom," Adrian said, placing the folder down like it belonged there. "We didn't want to delay this." "I understand," I replied. Celine smiled gently. "We're just here to make things easier for you." Easier. Nadine didn't say anything. She just watched. Always watching. I poured the tea slowly. The scent of bergamot filled the space between us. Earl Grey, Arthur's favorite. Funny how habits stay even when people don't. "Shall we go through it together?" Adrian asked. I nodded. He opened the folder. Page after page. Clean, organized, prepared. "This one gives me temporary financial authority," he explained. "Just so I can manage bills, investments, things like that." Temporary. "Just in case," Celine added softly. "Of course," I said. I picked up the pen. Let my hand pause. Not too long, just enough. "You're sure this is necessary?" I asked quietly. Adrian leaned forward immediately. "Mom, we've talked about this. It's just protection." "For you," Nadine added calmly. I looked at her. "For me?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "So nothing falls through the cracks." Cracks. Such careful language. I lowered my gaze to the paper again. "I don't want to be a burden," I said. And that was it. That one sentence changed the air completely. Adrian relaxed. Shoulders dropped. Breath steadied. Celine reached across the table, touching my hand. "You're not a burden," she said, but her eyes said something else entirely. "Let's just take care of this," Adrian said, sliding the paper closer. I signed the first page. Not everything, just one. Watched his reaction carefully. Relief again. Too much relief. He flipped to the next page quickly. And this one... "Wait," I said softly. They all paused. "I get confused with too many papers," I added. Celine nodded immediately. "Of course, we can do this step by step." Step by step, exactly. We went through 3 documents. I signed 2. Left the most important one untouched. The one that mattered most to him. Financial control. "I think that's enough for today," I said, setting the pen down. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. Again, fast, but not fast enough. We should finish while we're here, Adrian pressed. I'm tired, I replied. Silence. Then Nadine spoke, calm as ever. Pushing too much at once might overwhelm her. Adrian exhaled. Fine. Tomorrow then, he said. Tomorrow, I agreed. They stood to leave. But not before Adrian gathered the papers carefully, checking each signature like he was counting money. At the door, Celine turned back. You're doing the right thing, she said softly. I smiled. I know. After they left, I didn't move right away. I just sat there, listening. The quiet returned slowly like the house was reclaiming itself. Then I reached under the table, picked up the recorder, rewound, pressed play. Adrian's voice filled the room, clear, confident. Once we have authority, we list the house immediately. Celine. And the accounts? Adrian. We consolidate everything first, then divide, clean and simple. Nadine. Make sure it's all done before she realizes what's happening. I stopped the recording, sat in silence. Then I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, Opal was watering her garden, completely unaware that inside this house, something had just shifted permanently. They thought today was progress. They thought I was giving in. But what they didn't understand was that I had just given them exactly what they needed, to say everything out loud. And tomorrow, they would say even more. The next day, Adrian arrived earlier than expected. 9:32. I noted the time without looking at the clock. There's a certain kind of urgency people can't hide. It shows in how fast they knock, how quickly they step inside, how little they bother pretending this is still a conversation. He didn't bring Selene this time. Just Nadine. That told me everything. This wasn't about persuasion anymore. This was about closing. Mom, Adrian said, already placing the folder down. We'll keep this simple today. I'd appreciate that, I replied. Nadine gave me a small nod, taking her usual seat slightly to the side. Observing, measuring. I poured tea again. Same cups, same movement. Consistency matters. Just one document left, Adrian said, sliding it toward me. This gives me full financial oversight. It just formalizes what we already discussed. Full, not temporary anymore, not even pretending. I looked down at the page, dense text, legal phrasing, finality wrapped in polite language. I don't want to make a mistake, I said quietly. You won't, he replied immediately. Too quickly. I've reviewed everything. It's completely safe. Safe for who? I let my fingers rest on the edge of the paper. Then I looked up at him. And the house? There it was, a direct question. He hesitated, just for a second. We'll manage it responsibly, he said. Not you'll keep it, not it stays yours. Manage. I nodded slowly. And my accounts? We'll streamline them, Nadine answered this time. Make things easier. Streamline, divide, clean. All their words meant the same thing. I lowered my gaze again, picked up the pen, paused, not for effect, for timing, because this moment needed to feel real to them. I trust you, I said softly. Adrian exhaled, relief again, but this time deeper. He leaned back slightly, like the tension had finally broken. You can, he said. I signed, not rushed, not hesitant, clean, deliberate. The pen moved exactly how it always had. No shaking, no confusion. Perfect. I placed it down. There, I said. That's everything. Adrian didn't even try to hide it this time. The satisfaction. The quiet victory. He gathered the papers quickly, flipping through them once, twice, checking, confirming. "It's done," he said. Nadine nodded slightly. "We'll handle the rest." "Of course you will." They stood to leave, but they didn't leave immediately. People never do when they think they've won. They relax. They talk. And that's when truth becomes careless. "I'll call the agent this afternoon," Adrian said, already halfway to the door. "Good," Nadine replied. "The sooner we list, the better." "And the accounts?" "We move everything before she starts asking questions." I didn't move, didn't react, didn't breathe any differently. "Give it a week," Adrian said. "By then it's all finalized." A week. That's how long they thought it would take to erase me. The door closed behind them. Silence. Then I stood up slowly, walked to the table, picked up the empty cup, took it to the sink, washed it, dried it, placed it back exactly where it belonged. Routine matters. Then I walked to the bookshelf, opened the old encyclopedia, took out the recorder. My hands didn't shake, not even a little. I sat down, pressed play. Adrian's voice filled the room again, clear, unfiltered, unaware. "It's done. Nadine." "Good. Now we just move quickly." "Adrian." Before she realizes. I stopped the recording, sat there for a long moment. Then I reached for my phone, dialed Calder. "They signed," I said. A pause, then his voice, calm and precise. "And you?" I gave them exactly what they wanted. Another pause. Then, "Good," he said. "Now we take it back." I looked around my house, my walls, my life, everything still exactly where it belonged. "They think it's over," I said quietly. Calder didn't hesitate. "Then they won't see what's coming." I ended the call, and for the first time since this began, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. Because now, they had crossed the line, and I had everything I needed. They didn't come back the next day or the day after. No calls from Adrian. No careful check-ins from Celine. No soft, measured concern. Just silence. That told me everything I needed to know. They were busy. Moving things. Arranging things. Finalizing things. Exactly like they said they would. By the third day, the first sign appeared. A notification from the bank. Request in progress. Account restructuring. I didn't touch it. Didn't respond. Didn't interfere. Because Calder had been very clear. "Let them act," he said. "The more they do, the clearer their intent becomes." So I let them. That morning, I made my coffee the same way I always did, measured the grounds, waited for the kettle, watched the steam rise in slow, quiet curls. Routine, control, clarity. At 11:20, my phone rang. Adrian. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom," he said, voice steady, almost cheerful. "Just wanted to check in. How are you feeling today?" "Tired," I replied. A pause. Then softer. "That's okay. You don't need to worry about anything anymore." "I'm handling things." "Of course you are." "That's good," I said quietly. "We've already started organizing your accounts," he continued. "Just simplifying everything." "Simplifying?" "Yes," I said. "That sounds helpful." "It is," he said. "You'll see." I almost smiled. "I trust you," I repeated. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "I know." He hung up first. That was new. That afternoon, I went to see Calder. He had already prepared everything: documents, reports, statements, copies of recordings, carefully labeled and time-stamped. The independent medical evaluation from Dr. Mercer. The bank record showing unauthorized attempts, my logs, my photos, everything. "They've initiated transfers," he said, sliding a paper toward me. Not completed yet, but in motion. Good, I replied. He looked at me for a moment. Most people would be anxious, afraid, angry. I wasn't, because this was the part I had been waiting for. When do they file? I asked. Soon, he said. They need legal authority to complete everything cleanly. Otherwise, it becomes complicated. So they'll go to court? Yes. And they'll say I'm not capable. He nodded. That's the only way this works for them. I leaned back slightly. Then we let them. That earned the smallest reaction from him. A slight shift. Approval. Everything is ready, he said. When they file, we respond immediately. I nodded. Let them build their case. That evening, Celine finally called. Miriam, she said, skipping any softness this time. We need to discuss something important. I'm listening. We're filing a temporary guardianship petition, she said. There it was. No hesitation, no disguise. Just until things stabilize, she added quickly. It's a standard procedure. Of course, I said. Silence. She wasn't expecting that. You understand why this is necessary, right? She asked. Yes, I replied. Another pause. Then carefully. You're not upset? I let my voice soften. I trust you. That did it. I could hear it. Relief. Real, unguarded relief. Good, she said. This is the best thing for everyone. Everyone. Of course. We ended the call shortly after. I placed the phone down. Sat there for a moment. Then I reached for the recorder, pressed play. Her voice filled the room again. We're filing. It's necessary. Best for everyone. I stopped it. Because I didn't need to hear more. Not anymore. Everything was already in place. The next morning, the official notice arrived. Stamped. Formal. Cold. Petition for guardianship of Miriam Halstead. I read it once, then again. Then I placed it neatly on the table. Exactly in the center. Where everyone could see it. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted it there. A reminder. Not of what they were doing, but of what they had already done. This right here? This is the moment before the fall. They think they've won. Papers signed. Control almost theirs. Court, just a formality. Tell me honestly, would you panic here or stay calm? Like Miriam. Me? I'd stay exactly like this. Quiet, prepared, because the louder truth hits, the harder it lands. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Not grand, not dramatic. Just a quiet room with polished wood, a faint smell of paper and old varnish, and rows of seats that had seen too many family disputes dressed up as concern. I arrived early. Calder was already there, standing near the front, reviewing documents with the same calm precision he always carried. He didn't greet me with sympathy, just a slight nod. Everything is in order, he said. I know, I replied. Across the room, Adrian and Celine entered together. Nadine followed. Victor, too. They looked composed. That was the word. Not nervous, not uncertain. Composed. Adrian spotted me first. Our eyes met for a brief second. He didn't look away, but there was something new in his expression. Not guilt, expectation, like he was already preparing to speak for me. We took our places. The judge, Helena Cross, entered without ceremony, efficient, observant. The kind of woman who had seen enough to recognize patterns quickly. Petition for guardianship of Miriam Halstead, she began, scanning the file. Proceed. Their lawyer stood first. Measured voice. Clean delivery. This is a matter of concern for Ms. Halstead's well-being, he said. Her children have observed a steady decline in memory, judgment, and daily functioning. I listened. Every word familiar, every phrase rehearsed. Adrian was called to speak. He stood straight, hands folded just enough to appear controlled. "My mother has always been independent," he began. "But over the past months, we've noticed changes, confusion, misplaced items, repeated questions." I watched him carefully. Not the words, the tone. He wasn't lying badly. He was lying comfortably. Celine followed. Softer voice, more emotion. "She forgets conversations," she said. "She gets lost in simple tasks. We're just trying to protect her." Protect. That word again. Victor presented evidence, short clips, carefully selected moments, a dropped utensil, a paused answer, a slightly misplaced object. Each one framed as proof, each one missing context. I didn't react, didn't interrupt, didn't defend, because this part wasn't mine. Not yet. The judge turned to Calder. "Response?" He stood slowly. "Your Honor," he said, voice calm, controlled. "We agree that this case is about protection." A pause. "But not in the way it has been presented." The room shifted. Slightly. Just enough. He placed a file on the desk. "Before addressing the claims, we would like to introduce documented evidence regarding the construction of those claims." That word again. Construction. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly. "Go on." Calder didn't rush, didn't dramatize. He simply reached into his case and placed a small device on the table, the recorder. "This contains a series of recorded conversations over the past 6 months," he said, "all legally obtained within Ms. Halstead's residence." Adrian's posture changed. Barely, but I saw it. Celine's fingers tightened around each other. Victor looked at Nadine. Nadine didn't move. "Permission to play relevant excerpts," Calder continued. The judge nodded once. "Proceed." Calder pressed play. The room filled with Adrian's voice, clear, unfiltered, unaware. "Once we have authority, we list the house immediately." Silence, not empty. Heavy. Celine's voice followed. "And the accounts?" Adrian again. "We consolidate everything first, then divide. Clean and simple." No one moved. No one spoke. Because now, there was nothing to interpret, nothing to soften, nothing to reframe, just truth, out loud, in their own voices. Calder let it play a few seconds longer, then paused it. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "this is not a case of concern. This is a coordinated attempt to fabricate cognitive decline in order to gain financial control." Adrian stood abruptly. "That's not—" "Sit down," the judge said sharply. He did. Slowly. Celine's composure cracked first. "That's taken out of context," she said, voice unsteady. "Then we can continue," Calder replied. He pressed play again, Nadine's voice this time. "Make sure it's all done before she realizes what's happening." That was the moment, the exact moment. Everything shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. The judge leaned forward slightly. Her expression no longer neutral, no longer procedural. Now, focused. Calder stopped the recording. "We have additional materials," he said. "Medical evaluations confirming full cognitive capacity. Bank records showing unauthorized access attempts. Witness statements. Photographic evidence of staged incidents." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Because the room had already heard enough. For the first time since this began, I wasn't being spoken about. I was being seen. And across the room, Adrian no longer looked confident. He looked like someone who had just realized the story he built. was now being told by someone else. The silence after the recording stopped was not confusion. It was recognition, the kind that doesn't need explanation. Adrian didn't try to stand again. He stayed where he was, hands clenched together, staring at the table like it might offer him a version of events that still worked in his favor. Celine was the first to speak. "That's not what it sounds like," she said, her voice thinner now, stripped of its softness. "We were just discussing possibilities, planning ahead." Planning ahead? I almost admired the persistence. Calder didn't respond immediately. He simply placed another document in front of the judge. "Independent neurological evaluation," he said. "Conducted without family involvement. Full cognitive capacity confirmed." The judge scanned it briefly, then looked at me. "Ms. Halstead," she said, "would you like to speak?" For the first time since this began. I stood, not slowly, not weakly, just normally. "I would," I said. My voice didn't shake, not even a little. "I've lived in the same house for over 40 years, I began. "I raised my children there. I buried my husband. And I learned how to continue living anyway. I know where everything in that house belongs. I know what I say. And I remember what I hear." I didn't look at Adrian. Or Celine. Not yet. "They told me I was forgetting," I continued. "At first I thought maybe they were right. That's what happens when the people you trust repeat something often enough." A pause. But then things started moving. Now I looked at them. Objects I didn't touch. Mail that disappeared. Stories I never agreed to. Celine looked down. Adrian didn't move. "So, I stopped arguing," I said. "And I started listening." I reached into my purse. Not for the recorder, for something smaller. A folded sheet. "I wrote everything down," I said, placing it on the table. Dates, times, what was said, what changed. Calder stepped forward, handing copies to the judge. "And when that wasn't enough," I added, "I recorded the rest." The judge nodded slightly. "I heard enough," she said quietly. Adrian finally spoke again. "Mom, no," I said. Not loud, not sharp, but final. "You don't get to call me that here." That landed harder than anything else. Because it wasn't anger. It was distance. Clean. Complete. Celine's voice broke next. "We were trying to help you." "No," I replied. And this time I didn't hesitate. "You were trying to prepare me." Silence. "For removal," I finished. Calder stepped back. He didn't need to guide anything anymore. The judge closed the file in front of her. Slowly. Deliberately. "This court finds no evidence of cognitive incapacity," she said. "On the contrary, the presented materials strongly suggest deliberate manipulation of circumstances to fabricate such a claim." No one spoke. No one interrupted. Because there was nothing left to say. "The petition for guardianship is denied," she continued. "Effective immediately." A pause. Then, "I am also referring this matter for further review regarding potential financial exploitation." That was the line. The one they hadn't planned for. Adrian's face lost what little color remained. Celine covered her mouth. Nadine looked forward, completely still. Victor looked at the floor. And I didn't feel victory. Not the kind people expect. No satisfaction. No triumph. Just clarity. The kind that settles in when something finally ends. The judge looked at me once more. "You are free to leave, Ms. Halstead." Free. I nodded, collected my purse, and walked past them. Not quickly, not slowly. Just forward. And for the first time in 6 months, No one tried to stop me. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different. Not warmer, not lighter, just honest. No quiet performances. No careful voices. No one adjusting their tone to sound like something they weren't. I stepped down the stairs slowly, one hand resting on the railing, not because I needed it, but because I chose to. Footsteps followed behind me. Of course they did. Miriam. Adrian's voice. Not Mom. Not anymore. I stopped, turned. He looked smaller, not physically, but something in him had collapsed. The certainty, the control, the quiet confidence he carried through all of this. This didn't have to go this far, he said. I looked at him, really looked. For you, it didn't, I replied. Celine stepped forward, eyes red now, voice unsteady. We were trying to fix things before they got worse. They weren't getting worse, I said. They were, she insisted. You just couldn't see it. No, I said calmly. You needed me not to see it. That stopped her, completely. Nadine didn't speak. She just watched, like she always did. But this time, there was no calculation left. Only distance. You've made a mistake, Adrian said quietly. You've turned this into something it didn't need to be. I almost smiled. No, I said. You did that the moment you decided I wouldn't notice. Silence. Cars passing. Distant voices. The ordinary world continuing like nothing had happened. I would have helped you, I added. If you had asked. That landed. Because it was true. And they knew it. Adrian looked away first. Celine followed. Victor didn't even try to speak. Juniper stepped out from behind them. She hadn't said a word inside, not once. But now she walked straight toward me. Grandma, she said quietly. I turned to her. She hesitated for a second, then hugged me. Not carefully, not gently, just honestly. I'm sorry, she whispered. I placed my hand on her shoulder. This wasn't yours to carry, I said. She nodded, but didn't step back immediately. Good. She understood something the others didn't. When she finally let go, I turned back to the others. This ends here, I said. No anger, no raised voice. Just fact. You don't come to my house without being invited, I continued. You don't touch my accounts. You don't make decisions for me. Adrian opened his mouth, closed it again. Because there was nothing left for him to say. I adjusted the strap of my purse, looked at them one last time, and then I left. The house felt exactly the same when I opened the door. That surprised me. I expected it to feel different. Changed. But no. Same hallway, same light, same quiet. Because it was never the house that had shifted. It was everything around it. I walked into the kitchen, set the kettle on, listened to the water begin to heat. Routine, control, clarity. I placed the recorder on the table, not hidden anymore, just there. Beside Arthur's photograph, he looked the same as always, calm, certain. You were right, I said quietly. The kettle clicked. Steam rose. I poured the coffee, sat down, and for the first time in months, there was no voice in my head questioning what was real, because I had already answered that. My phone buzzed once. A message. From an unknown number. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I took a slow sip of coffee. Strong. Bitter. Exactly the way it should be. And I sat there, in my own kitchen, in my own house, in my own life, untouched. That's how it should end. Quiet, clean, no shouting, just boundaries that finally mean something. If I were in Miriam's place, I'd do the same. Maybe even earlier. Some people don't understand kindness until it's taken away. If you made it this far, write in the comments. When would you have stopped trusting them? And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if this hit you.